The massive doors of the Galactic Assembly Hall opened with a low hum. Jake Morrison walked through them, his boots clicking against the polished floor. The chamber was huge, big enough to hold thousands of beings from hundreds of different worlds. Crystal walls stretched up to a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside Central Hub Station. Jake had been here many times before, but today was different. Today would be his last time speaking for humanity in this place. He looked around at the alien delegates filling the circular rows of seats. The Vex sat in their section, their forearms folded across their chests. Their gray skin seemed to shine under the bright lights. The Zorthians floated in their water-filled tanks, their tentacles moving slowly as they watched him approach the podium. The Krex representatives clicked their mandibles together, making that sound that always reminded Jake of angry crickets. Near the front sat the Centauri delegation. Ambassador Vilix caught Jake's eye and gave a small nod. At least the Centauri had always been fair to humans. Jake nodded back before continuing his walk to the center of the chamber. Lisa Bennett was already there, standing near the human section. She had been Earth's main ambassador for 5 years now. Her face was calm, but Jake could see the anger in her eyes. They had talked for hours last night, going over everything one more time. The decision was made. There was no going back now. "Ready?" Lisa asked quietly as Jake reached her. "As ready as I'll ever be," Jake replied. He stepped up to the podium and placed his hands on its smooth surface. The noise in the chamber slowly died down as the delegates noticed him. "Members of the Galactic Assembly," Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation. "Systems. I stand before you today as the representative of United Earth and all human colonies." The chamber fell completely silent. Even the Krex stopped their clicking. For 73 years, humanity has been a member of this assembly. We have shared our technology freely. We have sent our ships to protect trade routes. We have helped build stations and colonies. We have given our knowledge of agriculture, medicine, and engineering to any who asked. Jake paused, looking around the chamber. "And what have we received in return?" A murmur ran through the alien delegates. Jake continued before anyone could interrupt. "In the past 10 years alone, this assembly has passed 47 regulations specifically limiting human activities. You have restricted our colony rights. You have placed limits on our fleet sizes. You have blocked us from certain trade agreements." The Vex ambassador stood up, his forearms spreading wide. "These measures were necessary for galactic stability. Humans expand too quickly. Your species is too aggressive." Jake had expected this. Too aggressive? Let me share some facts with you, Ambassador Krell. In the past decade, the Vex Empire has colonized 32 new worlds. Humanity has colonized 12. The Zorthian Collective has fought 4 wars with neighboring species. Humanity has fought none. Krell's gray skin darkened with embarrassment, but he remained standing. "That is different. We follow proper procedures." "Proper procedures," Jake repeated. "You mean procedures that always seem to favor certain species over others?" He touched a control on the podium, and holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber. "Let me show you some interesting data." The displays showed trade statistics, territory maps, and voting records. Lisa had spent months gathering this information. In every major trade dispute involving humans, the Assembly has ruled against us. Every time we've reported piracy in our sectors, our complaints have been dismissed. When the Makari attacked one of our mining stations last year, killing 15 humans, this Assembly decided it was an unfortunate misunderstanding. The Makari ambassador's feathers ruffled in agitation. That incident was investigated thoroughly. Yes, by a committee that included 3 Makari allies and no human representation, Jake shot back. He turned to address the entire chamber again. But today's meeting isn't about past grievances. It's about the latest proposal before this Assembly. He gestured to another display. The Vex Empire and the Zorthian Collective have jointly proposed new regulations that would limit human expansion to 1 new colony every 5 years. They cite concerns about our aggressive tendencies and rapid technological advancement. Jake's voice grew harder. Meanwhile, the Vex plan to colonize 6 worlds this year alone. The Zorthians have claimed an entire star cluster that was previously designated as neutral space. Lisa stepped forward to stand beside Jake. She held up a data pad. I have here signed statements from 53 member species who have benefited from human assistance. The Talaxians would have faced planet-wide famine without our agricultural experts. The Relorians still use our water purification systems. The Cassians rely on human doctors to treat a plague that almost wiped them out. Yet when we ask for fair treatment, Jake continued, when we request equal consideration, we are told we are too dangerous, too ambitious, too different. The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates shouted in agreement, others in protest. The assembly speaker, an ancient Eldorian, raised his staff for silence. Representative Morrison, the speaker said in his raspy voice, surely these matters can be resolved through proper channels. There is no need for dramatic gestures. Jake smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Proper channels? We've tried proper channels for 20 years. We've filed complaints, we've requested hearings, we've provided evidence, and nothing changes. He straightened his shoulders. Therefore, I am authorized by United Earth and all human colonies to make the following announcement. The chamber fell silent again. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Assembly. We will no longer provide technological support, security patrols, or trade agreements to Assembly members. We are recalling all human personnel from Assembly stations and facilities. Our gate technicians will return home. Our agricultural advisors will leave their posts. Our medical teams will pack up their equipment. The silence lasted for exactly 3 seconds. Then the chamber exploded. You can't do this, shouted the Vex ambassador. You need us. This is blackmail, cried a Zorthian delegate, his tentacles thrashing in his tank. The Krex representative stood on all 6 legs. Humans think too highly of themselves. We don't need your help. Jake waited for the noise to die down slightly. This is not a negotiation. The decision is final. Human ships will begin evacuation procedures within the hour. The Centauri ambassador stood slowly. Jake, please reconsider. Some of us have always supported humanity. Don't punish everyone for the actions of a few. Jake's expression softened slightly. Ambassador Vilex, you've been a true friend to humanity. But this assembly has made it clear that humans are not welcome as equals. We will not stay where we are not wanted. Lisa activated her communicator. All human personnel, begin withdrawal protocol. I repeat, begin withdrawal protocol. Throughout the station, humans started packing their equipment. Engineers powered down systems they had maintained for decades. Doctors closed their clinics. Traders canceled their contracts. In the assembly chamber, the reality began to sink in. The Talaxian ambassador jumped to his feet. Wait, our crop modifications require human oversight. Without it, we'll face shortages within months. The gate network, called out a Relorian. Human technicians perform most of the maintenance. Who will keep the gates running? Jake gathered his materials. I'm sure the assembly will find solutions. After all, human contributions have been minimal, according to your own statements. As Jake and Lisa walked toward the exit, delegates continued, shouting questions and protests. Some begged them to stay. Others insisted they were bluffing. At the doorway, Jake turned back one last time. The assembly has voted for 73 years to limit and control humanity. Now you'll have the chance to see how well you function without us. The massive doors closed behind them with a solid thud, cutting off the chaos inside. In the corridor, human staff members were already moving equipment toward the docking bays. Lisa looked at Jake. Think they understand what's about to happen? Jake shook his head. Not yet, but they will. As they walked toward the human section of the station, Jake's communicator chimed. Reports were already coming in. Human-run facilities across the galaxy were shutting down. Trade ships were changing course. Military patrols were returning to human space. The universe was about to learn exactly how much it had depended on the species it had tried so hard to contain. And Jake Morrison had just lit the fuse. 6 months had passed since the day humans walked away from the Galactic Assembly. Ryan Cooper sat in his office on Mars Station, watching the message counter on his screen climb higher and higher. 300 unread messages today alone. All from former trade partners begging for help. Ryan had been the human trade coordinator for the assembly for 15 years. He knew every trade route, every cargo schedule, every merchant captain in the galaxy. Now he watched those same routes fall apart on his display screens. Another attack in Sector 7, his assistant called out from the next room. The Krex raiders hit 3 cargo ships, no survivors. Ryan sighed and pulled up the sector map. Before humans left, their patrol ships had kept the Krex raiders under control. Human captains knew all the hiding spots pirates used. They knew how to track ships through asteroid fields. They knew how to fight in space. The Assembly's own security forces didn't know these things. They had never bothered to learn. "Sir, we have an incoming transmission from the Talaxian Trade Ministry," his assistant said. "They say it's urgent." "They all say it's urgent," Ryan muttered, but he accepted the call anyway. The screen filled with the worried face of Minister Vila. Her usually bright blue scales had turned pale with stress. "Coordinator Cooper, please, we need your help. Our food shipments aren't arriving. 3 convoys have disappeared in the last week. Our people are starting to panic." Ryan leaned back in his chair. "Minister Vila, I'm no longer the coordinator. Humanity has withdrawn from the assembly, remember? But you still have the contacts, you know the safe routes. Please, just tell us which paths to use." "The safe routes changed every week based on pirate activity," Ryan explained patiently. "Human scouts updated the information daily. Without those scouts, the old routes are useless." Vila's scales paled even more. "Then what do we do? Our storage facilities only have enough food for 2 more months." Ryan felt sorry for her. The Talaxians had always treated humans fairly, but orders were orders. "I suggest you speak to the Assembly's new Security Council. I'm sure they have a plan." After ending the call, Ryan turned to his assistant. "How many pirate attacks this week?" 47. "Confirmed. Probably more we don't know about. Before the withdrawal, there had been maybe 2 attacks per month. Human patrols had been everywhere, responding quickly to distress calls. Now the pirates operated freely. Across the galaxy, other problems were growing. Amy Sullivan, retired, Admiral of the Human Defense Fleet, watched the news feeds from her home on Luna Colony. The headlines told the story: banking crisis spreads to inner worlds, currency exchange rates fluctuate wildly, major trade networks report system failures. Amy knew what was happening. Human-designed banking algorithms had been running the galactic financial system for decades. They were complex programs that balanced millions of transactions every second. When humans stopped updating these systems, small errors began to build up. Her communication device buzzed. Another job offer. The 5th one today. "Admiral Sullivan," the message read, "the Makari Defense Force requests your immediate assistance. We offer triple your previous salary to command our fleet. Our borders are under constant attack." Amy deleted the message without replying. The Makari had voted against humans at every opportunity. They had called human military tactics unnecessarily complex and overly cautious. Now they wanted those same tactics to save them. Her screen showed footage from the Vex-Zorthian border. The 2 powers had declared war on each other just last month. Both had assumed they would win easily without human interference. Both were wrong. The Vex had better ships but didn't know how to use them effectively. The Zorthians had more soldiers, but couldn't coordinate their attacks. Human military advisors had always helped both sides plan their strategies. Now they were fighting blind. Cities burned. Space stations exploded. Millions of civilians fled the combat zones. And still the war continued, with neither side able to win or willing to surrender. In the Outer Rim, the situation was even worse. Dan Foster, former quantum gate technician, tried to explain the problem to his daughter Emma as they watched the news. "See that map, Emma? Each dot is a quantum gate. Those gates let ships jump across the galaxy instantly. But they're very old and very complicated." Emma nodded. "And you fixed them?" "My team and I did. The gates were built by an ancient race that disappeared long ago. Most species just use the gates without understanding how they work. Humans were different. We studied them. We learned their, secrets. On the screen, a reporter described the latest gate failure. The Cygnus Gate stopped functioning yesterday, cutting off 12 colony worlds from the rest of the galaxy. Assembly technicians report they cannot determine the cause of the malfunction. Dan shook his head. The Cygnus Gate always had power fluctuation problems. We had to recalibrate it every 3 months. Without proper maintenance, it was only a matter of time before it failed. Emma looked worried. Will those colonies be okay? They have local resources for a while. But without gate travel, supply ships would take years to reach them. More gates were failing each week. Trade networks that depended on quick transport collapsed. Entire sectors became isolated. The galactic economy, built on instant communication and travel, began to break down. Kate Williams, professor of interstellar history at Mars University, documented everything. She recorded testimonies, collected data, and wrote detailed reports about the collapse. The Assembly thought human contributions were minimal, she noted in her latest paper. They saw our patrols as unnecessary policing. They viewed our trade coordination as simple scheduling. They considered our technical maintenance as basic repair work. She pulled up statistics on her screen. In reality, humans provided 73% of all pirate suppression activities, 81% of trade route planning, 64% of financial system maintenance, and 92% of quantum gate technical support. Her colleague, Professor Alan Pike, looked over her shoulder at the data. They really had no idea. Did they? None, Kate confirmed. The Assembly ran on human expertise for so long that other species forgot how things worked before we arrived. They took our contributions for granted. Outside their office window, Mars bustled with activity. Human colonies were thriving. Free from Assembly restrictions, they expanded rapidly. New technologies emerged. Trade between human worlds increased. Earth's government had planned carefully for the withdrawal. Human space was self-sufficient. They didn't need alien resources or technology. The same couldn't be said for many Assembly worlds. The Lyrians, known for their art and music, had always imported their food. Without human trade coordinators, their supply lines failed within weeks. The artistic species now faced starvation. The mechanoids, master builders, and engineers discovered they couldn't get raw materials. Humans had always arranged mining rights and transport. Without those negotiations, factories stood idle. Ryan. Cooper received another desperate message, this time from the Assembly itself. The High Council requests a meeting with human representatives to discuss the current crisis. The official communication read, "We are prepared to reconsider previous restrictions on human activities." Ryan forwarded the message to Earth's government with a simple note. They're starting to understand. 6 months. That's all it had taken for the galaxy to begin falling apart. And this was just the beginning. The real crisis hadn't even started yet. In her apartment on Mars Station, Amy Sullivan watched another news report about failed peace talks between the Vex and Zorthians. Both sides had forgotten how to negotiate without human mediators. She turned off the screen and looked out at the stars. "You should have listened," she said quietly. "We tried to tell you. We tried to show you. But you thought you knew better." The universe was learning a painful lesson. Humans hadn't been the aggressive species that needed to be contained. They had been the glue holding everything together, and now that glue was gone. 2 years had passed since humanity left the Galactic Assembly. The universe looked very different now. Dan Foster stood in the observation deck of Titan Station, holding his daughter Emma's hand. They watched as another transport ship arrived, from Earth carrying refugees, not human refugees, aliens. "Daddy, why are all these aliens coming to live with us?" Emma asked. Dan sighed. "Because their gates stopped working, sweetheart. They can't get home anymore." The quantum gate network was failing everywhere now. Of the 347 gates that once connected the galaxy, only 890 still worked. And that number dropped every week. "I don't understand," Emma said. "Why can't they fix their own gates?" "It's complicated, Emma. Imagine you had a toy that someone else always fixed for you. If it broke after they left and you never learned how it worked, could you fix it? Emma shook her head. That's what happened with the gates. Other species used them, but only humans took time to learn how they really worked. The refugees below were Talaxians. Their homeworld had become isolated 3 months ago when their last working gate failed. Some had managed to reach human space using slower conventional drives. The journey that once took hours now took months. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Entire civilizations found themselves cut off. Trade impossible. Communication limited to sublight transmissions that took years to arrive. Back on Mars, Kate Williams updated her database of failing systems. Her office walls showed maps of the galaxy, with dark zones spreading like a disease. Each dark area represented systems no longer connected to the gate network. Professor Williams? Her assistant knocked on the door. You need to see the latest reports. Kate looked at her screen. 3 more gates had failed overnight. The Vex Empire, once spanning 50 systems, now existed as 5 separate groups that couldn't reach each other. Her assistant continued. The Zorthians sent another plea for help. Their war with the Vex is still going, but now they're fighting against Vex colonies they can't even communicate with. Neither side can coordinate their forces anymore. Civil wars, Kate muttered. Their empires are breaking into pieces, and the pieces are fighting each other. She pulled up footage from a human observation probe. It showed the remains of a massive space battle near the Altair system. Vex ships had destroyed other Vex ships, each group thinking the others were rebels or traitors. What's the death toll? Kate asked. Estimated at 12 million so far, and that's just from the Vex Civil War. The Zorthians are having the same problem. Kate added the numbers to her database. The deaths from wars, famines, and system failures now exceeded 2 billion, and it was getting worse. On Earth, the Human Security Council held another emergency meeting. General Patricia Wells addressed the gathered leaders. The situation continues to deteriorate, she reported. Based on our intelligence, we estimate that 63 advanced civilizations have now collapsed to pre-space technology levels. Another 28 are in critical condition. President Chris Palmer studied the reports. What about species extinction? 12 species face immediate extinction risk. General Wells answered. The Mirians can't survive without their off-world food production. The Celethi require medicines that can't reach them anymore. The Dracani are killing each other in resource wars. The Minister of Science, Dr. Eric Chen, raised his hand. There's another problem. The Galactic Navigation Beacon Network is failing. Everyone turned to look at him. These beacons help ships navigate through dangerous regions of space. Human volunteers maintained most of them. Without maintenance, they're shutting down one by one. Admiral Sophie Turner leaned forward. How bad is it? Ships are getting lost, Dr. Chen replied. Some fly into asteroid fields, others get too close to stars. 3 colony ships carrying Rillian refugees disappeared last week, probably destroyed. President Palmer rubbed his tired eyes. The assembly created this mess. They pushed us out. Yes, sir, General Wells agreed. But millions of innocent beings are dying. Outside the council chambers, normal human life continued. The colonies thrived. New technologies emerged. Children went to school. Adults went to work. Humanity had never been more prosperous. But the news from outside human space grew darker each day. Ryan Cooper, now working for the Human Trade Ministry, compiled lists of species seeking refugee status. His old contacts from the assembly days sent desperate messages. The Talaxians lost another colony to starvation, he reported to his supervisor. They're asking if we can take in another 50,000 refugees. Do we have space? We're building new habitats, but it takes time. And more refugee requests arrive every day. Ryan's screen showed the latest numbers. 5 million aliens now lived in human space. Another 20 million had applied for entry. In the physics lab at Luna University, Dr. Lisa Park worked on the gate problem. Her team studied the few functioning gates in human space, trying to understand their advanced technology. Any progress? Asked her colleague, Dr. James Kim. Some. We're starting to understand the power regulation systems, but full repairs are still beyond us. The ancients who built these gates were far more advanced than anyone realized. Except we figured out how to maintain them. Barely. Our ancestors spent 3 generations studying these gates. We knew just enough to keep them working, not enough to build new ones. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Humans had maintained technology they couldn't fully understand, while other species hadn't even tried to learn basic maintenance. Back on Titan Station, Dan Foster received an unexpected visitor. Ambassador Vilex of the Centauri stood at his door looking exhausted. "Ambassador," Dan said, surprised. "I thought you were still with the assembly." "What assembly?" Vilex replied bitterly. "It barely exists anymore. I've come to ask for asylum." Dan invited him inside. Over tea, Vilex explained the situation. "The remaining assembly members still meet, but it's pointless. We have no authority, no resources, no way to help anyone. Half the member species can't even attend meetings anymore because the gates to the capital are down." "I'm sorry," Dan said, and he meant it. The Centauri had always supported humanity. "We were fools," Vilex continued. "When humans managed everything, it all seemed so easy. We thought anyone could do those jobs. We thought humans were just lucky to have those positions." Dan nodded. He'd heard similar words from other refugees. "Now we know the truth. Humans worked harder than anyone else. You learned things others ignored. You maintained systems others took for granted. And when you left, everything fell apart," Dan finished. That evening, Dan explained to Emma why Ambassador Vilex would be living in their habitat. "The Centauri were our friends, Emma. Even when others treated us badly, they supported us. Now they need our help." "Will we help all the aliens?" Emma asked. "We'll help as many as we can. But we can't save everyone." In her office, Kate Williams added another update to her database. The Krex raiders, once confined to a small region by human patrols, now controlled 30 systems. They had more ships and weapons than some governments. The Makari Republic had split into 4 competing factions. The Talaxians had lost 2/3 of their population to famine. The Vex and Zorthians continued their war, even as their empires crumbled. "We tried to warn them," Kate said to herself. "We told them this would happen." She looked at a photo on her desk. It showed the last human delegation to the assembly, taken just before the withdrawal. They all looked so hopeful then, still believing the assembly might treat humans fairly. Now those same assembly chambers stood empty. The great hall where hundreds of species once gathered had no power, no life support, no delegates. The center of galactic civilization had become a cold, dead station drifting in space. Meanwhile, humanity thrived. Free from restrictions, human colonies expanded. New technologies developed. Art and culture flourished. It was a golden age for mankind, but it was a dark age for everyone else. As Kate finished her daily report, she wrote, "The universe is learning a painful truth. Humans weren't the problem that needed to be controlled. We were the solution that kept everything working. And the lesson was far from over." 5 years after humanity's withdrawal, a strange ship appeared at the edge of human space. It was a patchwork vessel, built from parts of different alien ships held together with makeshift repairs. Border Patrol Captain Maria Rodriguez watched, the ship on her scanner. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself." "This is Ambassador Vilex of the Centauri Confederation," came the reply. "I lead a delegation from what remains of the Galactic Assembly. We request permission to approach Earth." Maria checked her database. Vilex had been living as a refugee on Titan Station. Now he was back representing the Assembly. "Your ship looks like it's about to fall apart," Maria said. "It nearly did. 3 times. This was the only vessel we could assemble. Please, we must speak with Earth's leaders." Maria granted permission and escorted the fragile ship to Earth Station. As they approached, she got a better look at the delegation's vessel. Vex engines, Zorthian hull plates, Talaxian life support, all roughly welded together. It was a miracle it flew at all. The delegation that emerged looked just as worn as their ship. Along with Vilex, there were representatives from 8 other species. Their clothes were patched, their equipment outdated, their faces showing years. of hardship. President Chris Palmer met them in the council chambers. The contrast was striking. The human side of the table displayed advanced holographic interfaces and comfortable seating. The alien delegation sat on basic chairs carrying paper documents. "Welcome back to Earth, Ambassador Vilix," Palmer said. "I wish it were under better circumstances." "Thank you for seeing us," Vilix replied. "We know we have no right to ask anything of humanity, but we come not with demands. We come to beg." The other delegates nodded. Even the Vex representative, whose species had led the push to restrict humans, looked humble now. "The galaxy is dying," continued a Talaxian delegate. "Our civilization has collapsed. Billions are dead. Those who survive face starvation, disease, and constant war." Sophie Turner, now head of Human Colonial Affairs, activated a wall display. "We're aware of the situation. Our observation probes monitor what's left of galactic civilization." The display showed a map of the galaxy. Large sections were dark, indicating dead systems. Red zones marked active war zones. Yellow showed areas in critical condition. "By our count," Sophie said, 64 advanced civilizations have collapsed completely. Another 37 are failing. The death toll exceeds 15 billion. The Zorthian representative spoke through a translation device. "We did this to ourselves. We thought humans were a threat. We were wrong. You were the ones keeping us safe. From pirates, from system failures, from our own stupidity." President Palmer leaned back in his chair. "What exactly are you asking?" Vilix stood up. "We're asking humanity to return, to help us rebuild, to save what's left of galactic civilization." The room fell silent. The human leaders exchanged glances. "You pushed us out," Palmer said finally. "You called us aggressive. You limited our rights. You dismissed our contributions." "We were blind," the Vex representative admitted. "We saw human efficiency and called it aggression. We saw human curiosity and called it dangerous. We saw human helpfulness and called it interference." Dr. Eric Chen, the science minister, pulled up historical records. "In the 5 years before our withdrawal, the Assembly passed 127 anti-human regulations. You prevented us from colonizing new worlds. You blocked us from certain technologies. You even tried to limit our population growth." "We know," Vilix said. "We have a complete record of our mistakes." He placed a data crystal on the table. "Every vote, every regulation, every time we ignored human warnings." Admiral Sophie Turner studied the delegation. "You had 5 years to prepare for our withdrawal. We gave you all our technical manuals. We offered training programs. You refused everything." The Talaxian delegate's scales flushed with shame. "We thought we didn't need them. We thought maintaining trade routes was simple. We thought fixing gates was basic work. We thought keeping peace was easy." "And now?" Palmer asked. "Now we know the truth. Humans didn't just maintain our systems. You improved them. You didn't just fix problems. You prevented them. You didn't just keep peace. You built it." The delegation produced more documents, plans for a new galactic government, proposed treaties, constitutional frameworks. "We're offering humanity full leadership of a new galactic alliance," Vilix explained. "No restrictions, no limitations. No oversight committees telling you what you can and cannot do." Sophie Turner examined the documents. "This gives humans complete control over gate maintenance, trade routes, security forces, and colonial expansion." "Yes," Vilix confirmed. "We're also offering resource rights to any systems currently uninhabited due to the crisis, and we're prepared to accept any terms you set." President Palmer stood and walked to the window. Outside, Earth shone blue and white in the sunlight. Ships came and went from the orbital stations. Human space was peaceful and prosperous. "You're asking us to save you," he said without turning around. "After everything you did." "We're asking you to save the galaxy," Vilix corrected. "Trillions of innocent beings are suffering. Entire species face extinction. Children are starving. Worlds are dying. Palmer turned back to face them. If we agree, things will be different. Human methods, human leadership, human rules. We accept, the delegation said in unison. We'll need to rebuild everything from scratch, Sophie Turner added. New trade, networks, new security protocols, new gates when we figure out how to build them. We'll provide any resources you need, the Zorthian said. Our remaining industrial worlds are at your disposal. Dr. Chen raised a concern. The pirate problem has grown severe. The Krex raiders control entire sectors now. They have more ships than most navies. We still have some military forces, the Vex representative offered. They lack leadership and coordination, but they're yours to command if you return. The human leaders withdrew to discuss the proposal. The alien delegation waited nervously. In the chamber, after an hour, President Palmer returned with the others. We've made our decision, he announced. Humanity will help rebuild galactic civilization, but not as members of a reformed assembly. We will create something new. Relief washed over the alien faces. However, Palmer continued, there are conditions. First, the new organization will be called the Human Interstellar Cooperative. Humans will hold permanent leadership positions in all critical departments. Agreed, Violet said immediately. Second, all species must commit to educational programs. Your people will learn to maintain their own systems. No more dependency on others for basic survival. Of course. Third, there will be no restrictions on human expansion or development, ever. We wouldn't dream of it. Palmer looked at each delegate. Fourth, you will publicly acknowledge what happened. The truth must be taught to all future generations. The galaxy fell apart because you rejected and restricted the very species that kept you safe. The delegates nodded solemnly. Finally, Palmer said, this is your last chance. If humanity returns and faces discrimination again, we will leave permanently. No appeals, no negotiations. We will take our people to another galaxy if necessary. We understand, Violet said, and we accept all conditions. The treaty was signed that day. News spread quickly through human space and what remained of alien communication networks. At Mars Station, Ryan Cooper received the news with mixed feelings. They're asking us to come back and fix everything, he told his staff. The same people who called us troublemakers now want us to save them. Will you go back? His assistant asked. Of course. There are innocent people suffering, children starving. We can't ignore that just because their leaders were fools. On Titan Station, Dan, Foster prepared to return to his old job. Emma, now 12 years old, helped him pack. Do you forgive them, Daddy? She asked. It's not about forgiveness, Emma. It's about doing what's right. Those people need help, and we can provide it. Across human space, similar conversations took place. Engineers prepared to repair gates. Doctors packed medical supplies. Soldiers readied their ships to fight pirates. The reconstruction would be humanity's greatest challenge. But first, they had to save what was left. In her final report before returning to space, Kate Williams wrote, the galaxy learned its lesson, the hard way. They discovered that humans weren't conquerors to be feared, but guardians to be valued. Now begins the long task of rebuilding what was lost. The alien delegation's ship departed Earth with hope for the first time in years. Behind them, human vessels began gathering. The rescue mission was about to begin. 7 years after humanity had walked away from the Galactic Assembly, Jake Morrison stood once again in a meeting hall on Central Hub Station. But everything was different now. The old assembly hall remained dark and empty. Instead, Jake spoke from the new headquarters of the Human Interstellar Cooperative. The building was smaller, simpler, but it worked. Power flowed through its corridors. Life support hummed quietly. Ships docked at its ports. Ladies and gentlemen, representatives of all member worlds, Jake began. Today marks 2 years since the cooperative's founding. Let me share our progress report. The audience was different too. Many alien delegates wore simpler clothes. Some species had sent younger representatives, ones who had lived through the collapse and understood why change was necessary. Our first priority was restoring the quantum gates, Jake continued. Under the leadership of Chief Engineer Dan Foster, we now have 347 gates operational. That's up from only 89 2 years ago. Dan Foster, sitting in the front row, remembered those first months. His teams had found gates in terrible condition. Some had been damaged by desperate attempts at repair. Others had simply failed from neglect. We're training engineers from every member species, Jake went on. No longer will critical knowledge belong to just one species. 15 different worlds now have certified gate technicians. The Talaxian representative raised a hand. What about the trade networks? Director Ryan Cooper will present that report tomorrow, but I can tell you that safe trade routes have been restored to 1-200. Inhabited systems. Piracy is down 85% from its peak during the collapse. Ryan had worked without rest for 2 years. His new trade network was different from the old one. Instead of humans running everything, each species managed its own shipping but followed standardized procedures. Everyone learned the same navigation protocols, everyone used the same safety rules. The pirate problem, Jake said, looking at his notes. Admiral Sophie Turner leads our combined fleet operations. Sophie had assembled a mixed fleet from the survivors of various navies. Human commanders taught alien crews how to work together. Old enemies now served on the same ships. The Krex raiders have been pushed back to their original territories, Jake reported. They're no longer a major threat to shipping lanes. A Vex representative stood up. What about the territories they captured during the collapse? Being returned to their original owners or opened for new colonization under fair processes. No species gets special treatment. Every claim is judged by the same rules. Those rules were simple and clear. Any species could colonize empty worlds. No one could take inhabited planets. Resources were shared based on need and contribution, not political influence. Jake turned to another topic. Food security remains a concern. The famines have ended, but many worlds still depend on imported food. Agricultural Director Lisa Bennett is working on that problem. Lisa had created a new system. Worlds that could grow food helped those that couldn't, but they also taught farming techniques. The goal was for every world to feed itself eventually. We can't rebuild the galaxy if people are starving, Lisa had told Jake, but we also can't create permanent dependence. That's what caused these problems in the first place. In the audience, Ambassador Vilex listened carefully. The Centauri had adapted well to the new system. They followed human guidance without resentment, unlike some other species. Medical services have been restored to most populated areas, Jake continued. Director Amanda Chen reports that vaccination programs have prevented 3 potential pandemics. Amanda had built a network of clinics and trained local doctors. Humans shared their medical knowledge freely. No more exclusive technologies. No more restricted information. Now, Jake said, I need to address something difficult. The investigation into war crimes during the collapse. The room grew quiet. Everyone knew this was coming. The tribunal has completed its work. Several former leaders have been found responsible for genocide, including the use of biological weapons against civilian populations. They will be transported to the secure facility on Titan. No one protested. The crimes had been too terrible. During the worst days of the collapse, some desperate leaders had done unthinkable things. Let me be clear, Jake continued. The cooperative will not tolerate atrocities. We don't care if you're human or alien, powerful or weak. Justice applies to everyone equally. After the main session, Jake met with his senior staff in a private office. How are we really doing? Asked President Palmer, who was visiting from Earth. Better than expected, Jake replied. Most species are cooperating. They're scared enough to follow our lead. What about the ones who aren't? The Makari are still difficult. They resent having to follow human procedures. And some Vex colonies think they should have special status. They'll learn, Palmer said, or they'll find themselves isolated again. Later that day, Jake visited the engineering section. Dan Foster was training a group of mixed species technicians. The quantum field needs to be balanced across all 8 nodes, Dan explained. If even one node fails, the whole gate shuts down. A young Talaxian raised her hand. Why don't we add backup nodes? Good question. The ancients who built these gates used a specific 8-node design. We haven't figured out how to modify it safely. After class, Dan talked with Jake about the future. We're making progress, Dan said. But it'll take generations to train enough technicians. The knowledge gap is huge. What about building new gates? Maybe in 50 years. Right now we're still learning how the old ones work. In the security center, Admiral Sophie Turner monitored ship movements across human-controlled space. The pirates were contained, but other threats remained. Small wars keep breaking out, she told Jake. Old grudges die hard. Yesterday, 2 Vex colonies started fighting over resources. Did you stop them? We sent a peacekeeping force. Both sides backed down when they saw human ships arriving. That evening, Jake attended a dinner with representatives from several species. The conversation was very different from the old assembly days. Humans work too hard, complained a Zorthian diplomat. Your people never rest. We rest when the job is done, Jake replied, but the job is never done. Exactly. The Centauri ambassador chuckled. That's why humans run the galaxy now. They actually finish what they start. 2 weeks later, Jake witnessed a historic moment. The first multi-species crew launched on a deep space patrol. The ship, named Unity, carried beings from 12 different worlds. The captain was Elena Martinez, a young human officer. Her bridge crew included a Talaxian navigator, a Vex weapons officer, and a Centauri communications specialist. Unity, UINA, are cleared for departure, came the message from traffic control. Acknowledged, Elena replied. All stations report ready. Let's make history. As the ship left dock, Jake thought about how much had changed. 7 years ago, such cooperation would have been impossible. Now it was becoming normal. That night, Jake recorded his thoughts in his personal journal. The old assembly fell because it tried to control humanity instead of learning from us. They saw our energy as aggression, our curiosity as danger, our helpfulness as interference. Now they understand. Humans didn't want to conquer the galaxy. We wanted to improve it. We didn't seek power. We sought progress. The new order isn't perfect. Many problems remain. But for the first time in years, there's hope. The galaxy is healing. Civilization is rebuilding. And this time, we're doing it right. Every species has something to contribute. Every world has something to teach. But someone has to organize it all. Someone has to maintain the systems. Someone has to solve the problems. That's what humans do best. We see what needs doing, and we do it. We learn what needs learning, and we master it. We fix what's broken, and we improve what works. The galaxy finally understands this. They pushed us away and everything fell apart. Now we're back, not as servants or subordinates, but as leaders. And under human guidance, a new golden age begins. In the months that followed, more gates came online. Trade flourished. New colonies were established. The birth rate, which had plummeted during the collapse, began to rise again. Universities reopened. Research resumed. Art and culture slowly returned to worlds that had known only survival. And in schools across the galaxy, children learned a new lesson. The humans weren't a problem to be solved. They were the solution the galaxy had almost thrown away. The future was bright again. But this time, humanity would make sure it stayed that way.